In 4.5, we're looking at determinants, which is still within matrices. What we're doing is we're finding a single number of a matrix. Now, this number tells us whether or not it has an inverse, which is what we're learning in our very last section of chapter 4. So we're just going to learn how to find the determinant, and we'll learn how to use it in our next section. So if we want to find the determinant of a 2 by 2 matrix, we're going to multiply diagonally. So that's what the red arrows are talking about. And then we're going to subtract those two numbers. So we're going to take 5 times 9 and subtract -4 times 8 and get a single answer.
Are those absolute value?
They are not absolute value, but when you do see them, they're asking you to find the determinant. So it's the matrix normally has those like square bracket looking things. When they're just the vertical lines, you want the determinant. Yes?
Does it matter what order you put them in?
It does matter the order. We always want to do the upper left times the lower right. Do that one first and then subtract the other way. So we're going to try this 2 more times just to make sure we're good with this before we move on to a 3 by 3. So copy down these 2 determinants. You're always subtracting them, yes.
And you have to subtract second arrow? I don't know what you call it.
Always the same order. So looking at this first one, we're going to have -48 minus -70, which is 22. What 2 numbers are we subtracting on the last one?
28 and 45. And your answer is -70.
Any questions on a 2 by 2? So a 3 by 3 involves a little bit more work, but it's the same idea. But we have to get some tools in place before we find the answer to that. Any questions on these, though, before we try a 3 by 3? For this chapter, we're only going to be doing the 2 by 2s and the 3 by 3s. Yes?
What is the definition of a determinant?
The determinant is finding a single value, and the value tells you whether or not there's an inverse, which we're going to talk about in our last section.
Wait, are you taking this back?
Okay, so let's try this 3 by 3. So write down those 9 numbers. And then what's on the right-hand side, these minors? I'm about to tell you that these signs are going to be placed against what's over there. We're only going to be doing 3 by 3s, so you really only need to focus on that, although they do go on forever to the right and down. That's what those 3 dots mean. But we're only going to be focusing on a 3 by 3 for this chapter. So these signs right here are going to be multiplied by the numbers over there in our process. But just know that you're going to want to start by looking at these 2 things. You have your problem, and then we have the minors chart. First step is to pick any row or column. You will always end up with the same answer as your neighbor, even if they pick a different row or column than you. Also know that if there's a 0 anywhere, pick it, because it will save you time, and I'll show you why in a second. This one doesn't have a 0, so there's not any column or row that we would want to gravitate towards. So we can pick any of them. For the sake of all of us doing the same one, we're going to pick the middle column. So on your matrix, I would like you to circle those 3 numbers, which are also written right here. And then what we're going to do is look at the minors chart in the exact same position. So those symbols need to be multiplied by those numbers that we picked, because that's the middle column of the minors. This is the middle column of the determinant. So we're going to take a negative times -8, which gives us what? +8. Okay, and we take a positive times +2.
Wow.
And then we take a negative times 5.
Wow.
So those 3 numbers are now going to go here. So what's going to go in these determinants are 3 2 by 2 determinants that we already know how to find because we learned that in the previous slide, and I'll show you how to find those. So this 8, 2, and -5 are on the outside of the 3 determinants. Question?
How do you know how many lines to make?
Well, we're going to have a 2 by 2 determinant for each of these. Other questions? Now to figure out what 4 numbers to put in there, this is how we're going to do it. Cover up the row and the column of that number. So that's how you figure it out. So if you want to write yourself a note so that you remember how you got them, that's where we're looking. So for instance, what arrows? We are going to be using those as soon as we put these in. We have to first get the 2 by 2 matrices, and then we're going to multiply diagonally with those arrows. So looking at this 8 right here, if we covered up everything in the row and in the column, what 4 numbers are left? Those are the 4 numbers you write in the determinant in the same order, so we don't want to rearrange them in any way. All right. Because that's where the 8 is, so we cover that up. So to find this one, we need to cover up everything where the 2 is. So that's the column, that's the row. Okay. And now to find that last one, cover up the 5. We cover up the column, we cover up the row. And you're left with those. Questions on how I got those? So now we just need the answer. So we're going to set this up, 8, and then we'll multiply it by the answer of that determinant, plus 2 times this answer minus 5 times this answer. So now we're back to what we learned on the first page. So we multiply diagonally with those arrows. So we take -3 times 9, -27 minus -24 is what? -3? Yes, -3? All right, this one we multiply diagonally. So we've got 36 minus -12. And then we multiply here. 24 minus -9, 33. Now we put that whole thing in your calculator, and we get
-9.
so that would be the determinant of that 3 by 3 matrix. We're going to try one more. So those of you that didn't understand it the first time have a chance to relearn. All right, so we're going to try one more. Now remember, we can pick any row or column. There also aren't any zeros in this one, so we don't have any that we for sure want to make sure we do. So no matter which one you pick, everyone's going to get the same answer. Question?
So if there was a 0, like where the -1 is, we would pick.
Yeah, let me give you an example. If you had a 0 here, you would want to pick this or this, because when you set it up, you would have a 0 here, so when you multiply by that determinant, you really don't need to find it. You know what I mean? So it just saves you the work of needing to do that. You don't even need to find 2 and add them together. Okay. All right, so looking here, which one do you want to pick? Doesn't matter.
Third.
Okay. So looking at those 2, or those 3 numbers, we have to look at our minors chart. So we're looking right here at those 3 signs. Remember, we're multiplying the signs together. So we've got a negative times negative 2. Okay, and then we've got this. We'll fill that in later. Then we have a positive times a negative 1. Then we have negative times 5. Negative 5. Now we have to fill in our 2 by 2 determinants. If we cover up everything where the 2 is, which is right here, in the column and the row, what are the 4 numbers left? Cover up everything where the negative 1 is. And if you cover up everything where the 5 is.
Negative 5, 9, and negative 4.
Questions? Okay, now we just need to figure out these determinants. So we've got 2. We multiply diagonally. We've got 18 minus 24, negative 10 minus negative 16, and then negative 30 minus negative 36. So we've got negative 12 minus 6 minus 30. Questions?